Good afternoon and welcome to the Fox 5 Live Zone. I'm your host, Guy Lambert. It was an act of senseless violence, or even worse, an act of hate. This afternoon, reaction continues to pour in following the brutal slayings of two Israeli embassy employees. Sarah Milgrim and Yaron Leschinski were gunned down last night during what appears to be another act of anti-Semitism. Joining us now to discuss this and so much more is Mr. Ron Halber, CEO of the Jewish Community Relations Council of Greater Washington, joining us right here on the Live Zone. Mr. Halber, always good to see you, sir. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I wish it happened to be better with regard to the circumstances surrounding this. However, in this case, we are yet again dealing with what appears to be anti-Semitism. First of all, your thoughts and or comments surrounding this horrific incident.
Well, last night our organization had our own annual meeting and we went home, and then all of a sudden my phone went ablaze with every other Jewish leaders about the horrific slaying of this beautiful young Israeli Jewish couple set to get married, set to become engaged and to spend their lives together, and just killed on the streets of DC for no other reason for the fact that they are Israeli and Jewish. A senseless murder carried out by obviously a deranged individual who thought somehow killing two innocent people, you see them on the screen, beautiful couple, was going to bring about change 6,000 miles away. And unfortunately, this is not the first incident of this kind, and nor will it be the last.
Sir, you have been a leading advocate, if you will, for additional security funding for Jewish community and nonprofit institutions in and around the nation's capital region. My question to you is, as a result of this, yet again, this horrific incident, do you think we'll finally see that?
Well, it would be unfair to say that government hasn't stepped up. Mayor Bowser provided $500,000 for the first time for security funding. Virginia State has a fund. Maryland, the governor of Maryland, doubled the security funding. Montgomery County has a fund. But the kind of funding that we need is only possible by the federal government. The government needs to start providing billions of dollars to not just the Jewish community, but other communities at risk of hate crimes in order to go ahead and provide for operating dollars to pay for off-duty police officers and or armed security that can protect their institutions and also extend the perimeter from their events. Now, the American Jewish Committee, which was the sponsor of this organization, the sponsor of this program last night, is a very professional organization, excellent staff, and there was nothing they could have done to prevent this random act of violence. But as we look into the future, what we might want to consider is getting more money so we can have more security and expand it out beyond the immediate building at several blocks away, so to create a greater enlargement zone of security at Jewish community events. The one thing I do know is that the Jewish community is not going to stop living proud and openly proud Jewish lives. We're not going to be intimidated. We're resilient. And right now our hearts are broken with our Israeli brothers and sisters abroad.
You made mention of the beautiful couple. Of course, we're referring to Yaron and Sarah. Our sources have told us that he was planning to propose to her sometime in the near future. Yet again, pulling at the heartstrings to think that will never happen now.
So instead of attending a wedding, families will be attending a funeral.
Those who continue to spew hate and or turn the other way when something like this happens, and I'm making reference to anti-Semitism, what is it that you would like to say to those people?
Well, you got to understand, this goes beyond anti-Semitism, all right? So anti-Semitism, which has accelerated, anti-Semitism was accelerating as well as other forms of hatred against other minorities and the LGBT community, Asian Americans and African Americans, Latinos and immigrants, was already on the upswing. But when the war broke out in Israel, it accelerated even more. And when anti-Semitic rhetoric plainly against Jews is utilized, and it's not condemned heavily and it becomes normalized, it's going to lead to this type of radicalization. And here's another important point. People are throwing words around. People use the word Zionist like it's a pejorative term, which just means a person who's Jewish who believes in a national homeland. And you see a lot of these anti-Israel organizations using this word every day and accusing Israel of things like genocide, which is absolutely disgusting because the word genocide was created to explain what happened in the Holocaust, because nothing had ever happened to them. They had to create the word genocide. To say that Israel's conducting a genocide is outrageous. I even hear ethnic cleansing, and that's outrageous too. I mean, yes, there is a humanitarian disaster in Gaza. Israel was attacked. There's a war. It's horrible. And how many Palestinians have been killed? A lot of them have been killed because Hamas has been using their own people as shields. A lot of them have been killed because of accidents of Israel. And your hearts bleed for all that. But it's not ethnic cleansing. And it's not genocide. And when you use words like that, you get people self-radicalized. And our greatest concern is that the person who's not on the radar of the FBI or not on the radar of the police, who starts listening to all this venomous hate and becomes radicalized and picks up a gun and starts committing an act of terrorism. Now, I don't know if that's what happened yesterday, but I'm going to bet on that is what happened.
Well said, sir. Yet again, we have been speaking with Mr. Ron Halber. He's the CEO of the Jewish Community Relations Council of Greater Washington, joining us right here on the Live Zone. Truly appreciate you joining us, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Well, Mr. Halber isn't the only one calling for more awareness. So is my next guest. I'm referring to Mr. Gil Pruz. He's the CEO of the Jewish Federation of Greater Washington and joins us right here on the Live Zone. Mr. Pruz, thank you so much for joining us. I wish, yet again, the circumstances happen to be a lot better.
Thank you for having me.
Obviously, there is a number of folks reacting with regard to the horrendous act that took place last night. Any comments thus far, sir?
I just want to reiterate, I mean, the nature of the violence of someone coming to an event where people were gathering to build bridges and connect and think about how to reduce the violence in the Middle East is such a shock. Coming up to people and point blank murdering them at such an event, such an act of anti-Semitism within our city is just shocking. On the one hand, yet far too frequent on the other hand, as we've seen around the country and over time.
You hit the nail right on the head with regard to that. That takes me to my next question. It's 2025. I looked at the calendar today. Obviously, we all know that. I'm still talking about anti-Semitism. It's still an issue, and I would even argue for some, it's become a thing of the norm.
Yeah, so when I was growing up, I thought it was something that was going to go away, that anti-Semitism was diminishing in this country. But what we've seen over the past 10 years, and it's not just since October 7th, but over the past 10 years, there's been a significant increase in anti-Semitism across the country. Whether it is people drawing swastikas or saying things about the Jewish community, and it's just this growth. And so understanding why that is happening and how do we change that, because that in many ways is what enables partly the act that we saw last night.
Sir, with regard to security, I'm curious, do you feel safe yet again with security? And we do know that obviously it has been beefed up throughout the area, but well, some would argue that's only temporary.
Right. So it is important as we go forward that we re-examine all the security protocols. We believe that we have put excellent ones in place, but we need to make sure not only is there the physical security to prevent someone, but also the training that everyone has, what to do, how to identify someone suspicious, what to do and how to respond when something arises, because security is both physical and also mental and cultural. We need to make sure that there's growth right now in what is happening, but that it doesn't diminish in a week or 2 weeks or 1 month, because the threat doesn't go away in that time period. It will continue even after some of perhaps the broader focus goes away.
Mr. Pruz, we'll end with this, and that's the same question I posed to my last guest, and that is, how do we bring about more awareness? How do we bring about change? How do we make sure this never happens again?
I think the biggest part is that we need people across the spectrum, across different forms of leadership, civic, religious, political, business leaders, regardless of their political perspective, to actively and consistently condemn anti-Semitism and condemn this attack as well as all the other attacks. We have to make it illegitimate once again, like it felt it was becoming 20 years ago, but right now it is as if people are allowing it and ignoring it and we have to change that dynamic. Leadership must lead on this as we go forward.
Well said, sir. Yet again, we have been speaking with Gil Pruz. He is the CEO of the Jewish Federation of Greater Washington. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, guys, time now, 12:10. This is the Fox 5 Live Zone. I want to bring you up to speed. We are awaiting D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser to hold a press conference, yet again, discussing all things surrounding the 2 lives gone far too soon. We are expecting that to get underway beginning at 1 p.m. or so. Should that happen, and when that happens, we'll take you there live right here on the Live Zone. Switching gears to politics, House Republicans passed President Trump's sweeping tax and spending cuts package earlier this morning, marking a stunning victory for both Speaker Mike Johnson and Trump after the bill appeared doomed just days earlier. All this as reaction continues to pour in following President Trump's meeting with the South African president yesterday. Joining us to discuss this and so much more is Mr. Timothy Allen Simon, political strategist back here on the Live Zone. Timothy, always good to see you, sir. Happy Thursday.
You Guy. Thank you.
Obviously, the world is still reeling over the loss of the innocent lives that were taken last night with regard to the 2 Israeli embassy employees. What can or should the president do with regard to addressing anti-Semitism, Timothy?
Well, first, let me extend my condolences to this beautiful couple that was so tragically gunned down. I do believe the Trump administration is taking extraordinary steps to combat what has been defined as anti-Semitism, particularly on college campuses and other public places. In this particular incident, I think there should clearly be heightened security at locations that could be targets for these types of violent acts. We also get back to gun legislation, but that's not the topic that we're addressing. Someone has to address the fact that we are a very gun-prone and very violent society, and what can we do to make certain that whomever the killers were do not have easy access to firearms to engage in this type of murderous behavior. But with that being said, I do believe President Trump has put an emphasis on combating anti-Semitism, as did former Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff, who not only was addressing the issue of anti-Semitism, but also Islamophobia that exists in this country as well. Overall, it comes down to we have to eradicate hate and bigotry wherever we find it, because it can grow like a California wildfire. This nation's history has shown that there's a strong propensity towards racism, and there has to be aggressive steps to prohibit that.
Well said, Timothy. We'll move on to the next big story of the day, and it is official. The House has now passed the president's big, beautiful agenda. It now heads to the Senate, and then if all goes as planned, it will then head to the president's desk. Now, many have said once completed, this will define the president's legacy. What say you, sir?
Yes, every presidency in its beginning or the honeymoon period usually takes on a big, bold initiative. In the case of President Obama, it was the Affordable Care Act. In the case of President Biden, it was the clean energy transition and certain civil rights measures. In this case, with President Trump, it's the big, beautiful bill, which is not just fiscal, but also promotes many of the campaign positions that he took in his successful run for his second presidency. It does have to go to the Senate. I think certain provisions are up for grabs. It's not going to be the same bill when it comes out of the Senate. One of the areas that I focus on, as you know, is energy. And I think the pulling back of tax credits for certain projects that were voted on bipartisan and invested in bipartisan may in fact be a challenge. There's also the issue regarding state and local taxes. I live in California. We're a SALT state. There will be close observation. And then that third rail is Medicare and Medicaid. And will these adjustments affect those that that legislation, those laws were protecting or designed to protect? And I think, as Speaker Jeffries points out, oftentimes Medicare and Medicaid, Social Security are looked upon as entitlements, but in fact, these are funds that Americans pay into. And when you start reducing those who have access, particularly those in need, that will be a controversy when this bill attempts to reconcile.
It was very interesting. The president stated to his party, do not, and I repeat, do not touch Medicaid. It's going to be interesting to see if that will be the case once it makes its way now to the Senate. Let's revert back to yesterday, Timothy, with regard to the South African president paying a visit to the White House. We now know that he is being praised for, in so many words, staying calm during Trump's Oval Office ambush. And I will repeat the word ambush. What did you think about that encounter?
Well, it was kind of like Zelensky Part 2. It was very theatric, and clearly President Trump was messaging to a certain portion of its base, and the grievance, those feeling that white people are under excessive attack, largely due to what has been called identity politics or cultural wars, is a growing feeling in the United States, in Europe, feeding many of the white nationalist or white nationalist Christian movements. With that being said, the fact that President Ramaphosa brought Ernie Els and other certain white South Africans to try to refute the president's claim, I believe was powerful, and he should be commended for maintaining his calm. Also beyond this is the position that South Africa has taken with certain adversaries of the United States. And that history goes back to Nelson Mandela and the African National Congress known as the ANC. They have aligned with those world powers that they feel supported their liberation in the southern region of Africa. And this oftentimes rubs against the grain of how America has viewed African nations, and I would say almost in a neo-colonial fashion. So I think this was more than just the allegations of genocide on white South African farmers. It's actually a larger discussion of the United States' tenuous relationship with South Africa.
It was very interesting. The South African president, to your point, stating or making mention of Nelson Mandela many a times, stating that because of him, well, they will follow the road of peace and know how to go about it with regard to getting peace. I found that to be very interesting. We'll end with this, Timothy, and that is the new book that's surrounding former President Joe Biden. We now know that Democrats were, in essence, shocked at Biden's decline, but stayed quiet. To one point, one staffer stated that the president said, hey, what are we doing here? What do you think about that, if that's actually the case?
Well, this isn't the first time that a president's mental acuity or mental health has been kept from the public. Our presidents tend to be elder statesmen, older, with the exception of possibly Bill Clinton and John F. Kennedy. Hence, they are subject to some of the mental decline that we all will face probably at some time in our lives. With that being said, it should not be a shock. The American people, the Saturday Night Live skits, the comedians were all referencing the decline of President Biden. And it's tragic, in my opinion, that the Democratic Party at a time when it could be the counterbalance to the far right in the Republican Party are now again mired in their own missteps and not being transparent with the American people on President Biden's mental condition. Yeah. It's tragic, and it's going to take a lot of spin to climb out of this hole.
It leaves one to wonder if he was fully transparent with regard to when he found out about his cancer diagnosis. Yet again, yes. Perhaps we will never know. Timothy Allen Simon, political strategist, joining us right here on the Live Zone. Always good to see you, sir. Thank you so much for your time.
Great to see you. Thank you, Guy.
All right, guys, we'll take a quick break. Hey, on the flip side of that break, Kid Cudi officially taking the stand in the Diddy trial. We'll talk about that next and so much more right here on the Live Zone.
So that I wouldn't be driving the same speed, right? Cop stops. He said, where you been? I said, oh, I took my mom to the bus station. Smell your breath. And I asked him, go Jack Taps and everything. So, oh boy, here we go. Breathed in his face. He was like, didn't realize that he said, don't hit. So they did, yes. Where? Oh, okay. When I lived in Pittsburgh, there was a.
Oh, yeah.
You go in there, and all the tables, there were all about 4 or 6 people. Every placemat had the number on the table, like your table had a number, and you could look and see where, like, we saw where you go. And every table had a phone.
All right, guys, back here on the Fox 5 Live Zone, you're taking a live look right here at the nation's capital where in just about 30 to 40 minutes, we are expecting D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser to walk up to that podium you see on your screen. Obviously, she will address the horrendous act that took place last night with regard to 2 Israeli embassy staffers being brutally gunned down. That's what's happening here in the nation's capital. Meanwhile, up in New York City, the Reverend Al Sharpton now speaking out with regard to that horrific incident yet again. Let's take a listen in.
The fact is, you cannot be a civil rights activist or leader if you're only for your own civil rights. You cannot be a faith leader if you only stand up for people in your own faith. So I would hope that people that see us stand together know we not only stand together for a press conference, we will defend each other's places of worship, education, and each other's right to peaceful protest, whatever we want. But you give people that peacefully protest a bad name when you turn naked, raw hate vigilantism and try to cover it that you're standing for a cause other than your own erosion of morality and a sustained sense of we all have the right to disagree without being disagreeable. So I thank the faith leaders for coming. I thank the mayor for responding. I thank the Rabbi Potasnik for helping us come together. All of us know there'll be people in our communities that will not understand why we're together. That's why we're together, because we need to make people understand that until we all understand why we're together, we're going to keep having tragedies, and we cannot have it wait to come to our doors. That's why imams are here. Islamophobia is wrong, homophobia is wrong, and yes, anti-Semitism, even well-polished, is wrong and must be condemned. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend. I just want to thank everyone who's here behind us. Unfortunately, there's so many folks here that we would be here all day if I would name them all. So I just want to say thank you very much to the folks here at the center for having us, specifically Rio Danielle, the CEO, and Dr. Gabrielle Rosenfeld, the president of the Center for Jewish History, as well as the entire team here for hosting us for the work that you do every day to preserve and share Jewish history. Next, I want to introduce Ariella Rada. She's from the Israeli Consulate General of Israel here in New York. Ariella.
Good morning. We are heartbroken and horrified from this horrific act of anti-Semitism that occurred on a U.S. soil. This is something that we did not believe we will ever see. And this is, have no mistaken, this is the result of unprecedented incitement that is being held and pushed by terrorists, that their main goal is the destruction not only of the Jewish state, but also the Jewish people. when we are seeing people chanting in the streets of New York, in U.S. campuses, and are calling for intifada, globalizing the intifada, and are chanting and calling for the murder of Jews wherever they are. This is not just a problem of Israel or the Jewish people. This is a global problem of violent people who are trying to destroy the Western world. Yaron and Sarah were part of our embassy in Washington. They were brilliant, they were young, and they were planning to go to Israel and get engaged. Their death is senseless. And this is the time to call everybody to stand up against anti-Semitism, against hate. This is the time to speak out and speak loud and condemn all those violent acts that we're seeing against Jews, not only here in New York, but all over the world. When you see this horrific incitement that are trying to portray Jews and Israelis as the worst thing, as the devil, and as other terms that being used without any understanding of the conflict, without any understanding of what happened to Israel and the Jewish people on October 7th, the horrific act that claimed the life of 1,200 Israelis, the terrorists that came with hate in their eyes, aiming to murder children, women, elderly. The hate that we saw, that they had and they executed. This is something that people here are choosing to forget, are choosing to dismiss. Well, let me tell you, this is the result of those that are chanting intifada, intifada, and those that are trying to portray Israel as if we're just fighting a fight that we enjoy, which is not the truth at all. And this is the time for everybody to stand and speak against those acts of anti-Semitism and, of course, hate. Thank you so much, Mayor, for standing with the Jewish people, for standing with Israel. This is something that we appreciate and don't take for granted. And I call everybody to please speak up, that this is the time. This is the result of people staying silent. May Sarah and your own memory be of a blessing. We send our condolences to their families and pray for better days. Thank you.
Thank you, Ariella. Next, we'll hear from Hindi Pupko from the UJA Federation here of New York.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Mayor, for your leadership, and thank you, Rev Sharpton, for gathering us today. We gather here this afternoon in the aftermath of the shocking and vile murder of two young people in love, Yaron and Sarah. Shocking, but sadly not surprising. As the mayor said, after 19 months of violence and hateful rhetoric directed at Jews and the state of Israel, violence was inevitable. Our heart breaks for them, their lives lost, their futures lost, and our hearts break for their families. But in our grief, we know that we are not alone. The mayor stands with us today and has always stood with us. You were right there with us right after October 7th, and you have stayed with us while many others have left. And under the leadership of Police Commissioner Tisch, we know that the New York Police Department has our back and will continue to protect us. But let us also be clear about one thing. While Jews everywhere are facing an onslaught of hate, Jewish life will continue. In Washington, in New York, and wherever Jews gather. We remain resolute in our commitment to living our lives as proud Jews. And it is our mayor who continues to give us the courage and resoluteness to do just that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shindi. Next, we'll hear from Mohammed Razvi, the CEO of the Council of People's Organizations.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Mohammed Razvi, and I represent Council of People's Organization, one of the largest Muslim organizations in Brooklyn, and we service with almost 70 Muslim groups. We stand here together. Thank you, Reverend Sharpton, Mr. Mayor, Commissioner Tisch, coming forward. Most important thing is we are standing together, and we are going to repeat all the time that we are going to be always united against hate. In the Quran, it's written that if you take one innocent life, it's as if you have taken the life of all mankind. This is true to all Muslims, and this heinous act has really hurt so much. Just the fact that how could you just hurt these two folks who were about to, if I understand correctly, about to get married, and just the fact that
our staff members from the museum on a prayer walk here, and we're going to lay a wreath in solemn memory of those who...
We were watching New York activists combine forces with regard to addressing all things surrounding that horrific incident that took place right here in the nation's capital. I believe we have the shot back up. Let's go ahead and take a listen in.
Coming together repeatedly. And under Mayor Eric Adams, we have been coming together all the time. Hate is something that is perpetuated, taught. A child is not born to hate. That's something you pick up at a dinner table. You hear something, someone making a remark, and same thing as Pupko is saying and others are saying, that it's the rhetoric that's causing this fuel of hate and someone coming and do such a heinous act. We just pray for the families, and more importantly, let's stay together, and anytime this happens, we have to stand together, and we have to show others this is what New York is about, this is what humanity is about. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. Next, we'll hear from Reverend A.R. Bernard from the Christian Cultural Center.
Thank you. Good morning. You know, when Rabbi Bethesda called me this morning, I had one question for him. What are we going to do? We, because that's who it's going to take. We. Us coming together. We are heartbroken and outraged by the tragic and senseless killing of these two individuals who were in the beginning of life, their future. We extend our deepest condolences, of course, to the victims' families, loved ones, and the entire Jewish community. There is no justification for this kind of violence, none. Acts of hate, regardless of the political or religious context in which they are cloaked, must be unequivocally condemned. Protest must never become terror. And we stand in full solidarity with our Jewish friends and neighbors, because an attack on one member of our community is an attack on all of us. In moments like these, we must reaffirm our shared values, our dignity, peace, and respect for human life. We urge our communities to resist the pull of hatred and instead pursue justice through peaceful, lawful means. Let us continue to work together, unafraid of who may judge our unity, unafraid of who may judge our friendships, because those that judge should be joining us and not remaining silent or critical of what needs to be done. Let me say, Mayor Adams has stood with the Jewish community. I've seen it I've participated in it. And we will continue to stand with the Jewish community. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you very much, Reverend. Finally, we'll hear from Rabbi Joseph Potasnik from the New York Board of Rabbis.
Thank you. When I walked into the center this morning, there were young people here to look at the exhibit of Anne Frank. Anne Frank was a young woman consumed with love, whose life was consumed by hate. We're remembering two people whose lives were consumed by love, and their lives were taken by hate. I want to thank the non-Jewish individuals who called this morning, Reverend Sharpton, Detective Amen, Father Muldoon, Cardinal Dolan, so many others, who reminded me that anti-Semitism is anti-Christianity, is anti-Islam. We say in our tradition that life and death are in the hands of the tongue. And what we have found over the years, that what may start in the mouth or the tongue descends to the heart and ultimately to the hands. When Jews are slaughtered in a sanctuary in Pittsburgh, we are not safe. When a young Jewish yeshiva kid is killed on the Brooklyn Bridge, we are not safe. When students at a college right near here have to hide in a library during an anti-Israel demonstration, we are not safe. So, to those young people downstairs, we should make sure they see all of us standing together. We do teach them that 1 and 1 equals 2, but we also have to teach them that 1 and 1 equals 1, that all of us, regardless of our faith traditions, are many, but we are one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi. I apologize. We also have Josh Kramer from the AJC. AJC is exactly where the horrendous attack last night happened in Washington, D.C.
Thank you. And thank you to the mayor and to Reverend Sharpton for convening this group. The grief that we feel is reaching all around the world right now, our worst fears have been realized. Jewish communities from D.C. to Tel Aviv to Paris and here in New York are mourning this devastating murder outside the AJC Young Diplomats reception at the Capitol Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C. I have additional details I can share about last night's incident at the Young Diplomats reception, but it can't go without saying that all people of good conscience join together, as represented here in this group, standing shoulder to shoulder in mourning together with the Jewish community. And thank you all for standing up for what is right. Last night's event was organized by AJC Access, our young professional division, which empowers Jewish leaders to advocate on behalf of critical domestic global issues facing the Jewish community. And this annual event brings together young professionals and the diplomatic community. This year's theme was turning pain into purpose, which takes on a whole new meaning the next day after what ultimately happened. Attendees heard from members of the Multi-Faith Alliance and from IsRaid on humanitarian diplomacy and how a coalition of organizations from the region and for the region are working together in response to humanitarian crises throughout the Middle East and North Africa. Sarah Milgram was a member of the Department of Public Diplomacy at the Embassy of Israel and a member of AJC Access. She was committed, close with many in the AJC New York community and AJC community all around the world. She was committed to peace building. She received her master's from the University of Peace in 2022, passionate about sustainability and people-to-people relations. She previously worked for Tech to Peace an organization that brings together young Israelis and Palestinians for intensive seminars which focus both on peacemaking and tech training. She was a cherished member of the second cohort of the AJC Mimuna Sachs Fellowship for Emerging Leaders, where she joined American, Israeli, French, and Moroccan leaders focused on advancing relations in the Middle East and North Africa region through agriculture, tourism, and civil society. Sarah will be remembered as being warm, compassionate, a wonderful listener, and a devoted partner. Yaron Lashinsky was a member of the political department at the Embassy of Israel and focused on Middle East issues. He was also a friend, reserved, but always had a smile on his face. He was a welcoming presence. He attended numerous AJC events throughout his time in Washington, and at last night's event he shared how excited he was to be going back home to spend Shavuot with his family in Israel.
Yet again, you've been listening to New York community leaders speak to the horrific incident that took place right here in the nation's capital. 2 members of the Israeli embassy staffers gunned down. Speaking of the nation's capital, let's take you back to the nation's capital, where officials are now yet again speaking on the matter at hand.
שלום לכם. אתמול בלילה הגעתי לזירת האירוע יחד עם פם ברנדי ושופטת ג'נין פירו. במקום הזה דיברתי עם נשיא ארצות הברית, דונלד טראמפ, שהתקשר אליי, ביקש להביע את תנחומיו ואת כעסו על האנטישמיות הגואה בארצות הברית, והבטיח לעשות הכל כדי למגר את המגפה הזאת של אנטישמיות. I arrived here last night after the security forces allowed me to reach the site. I met Attorney General Pam Bondi, Judge Janine Pirro, Chief Attorney for Washington. Ms. Bondi turned the phone over to the President. The President was very firm in his statement, expressing condolence and condemning violence. Asked me to convey that message to the Prime Minister Netanyahu. They spoke just 10 minutes ago. The President reaffirmed his commitment to uproot the violent anti-Semitism that has swept across university campuses in this country. It is imperative to understand that this form of anti-Semitism is not new. It's as old as the Jewish people are. But this form of anti-Semitism takes on a new form. The person who shot these 2 young people dead last night screamed, "Free, free Palestine." This is done in the name of a political agenda to eradicate the State of Israel. The State of Israel is now fighting a war on 7 fronts. This is the 8th front. The war to demonize, delegitimize, to eradicate the right of the State of Israel to exist. When people say Israel has a right to exist, I say, thank you very much. We're not looking for anybody's acknowledgement. Nobody says that Belgium has the right to exist. Nobody says that South Africa has the right to exist. Israel has a right to exist, a right that goes back over 3,000 years. Long before there was anything called Palestine as a geographic location, there was Israel, the people of Israel, and the land of Israel. We've come home, we plan to stay there, and we're not going to be intimidated by the violence of those screaming on behalf of Palestine. These were 2 young, beautiful people, Yaron and Sarah, planned to be engaged next week in Jerusalem. Yaron bought a engagement ring this week, and he was taking his soon-to-be bride to meet his parents, who live just outside of Jerusalem. Their murder will not be in vain. People of Israel's embassy in Washington will continue to serve the people of Israel and to bridge the friendship, deepen the friendship between the American people and the people of Israel. We will not be deterred. We are a resilient people. Israel's resilient. The United States is resilient. Together we're going to stand off and defeat this anti-Israelism and anti-Zionism, which parades around as something along the lines of freedom-seeking. This is not freedom-seeking. Hamas is a death cult. They declared war on behalf of Iran and a ring of fire in order to eradicate us. And this individual here last night was an extension of that ring of fire. They will be defeated. Thank you.
We'll now take some questions. CNN, please.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, and of course I'm very sorry for the loss of your two staffers. I was wondering if you could comment on whether you've learned anything, either from the Israeli security services or the American law enforcement, about the writings of the suspect and perhaps any connection to activists or terror groups. And then more broadly, could you comment on how anti-Semitism around the world is affected because of Prime Minister Netanyahu's war aims of continuing the war to eradicate Hamas?
We don't have any further information. I was here last night with Washington's chief of police, the mayor of Washington, and of course, all the law enforcement agencies. The suspect continues to be under investigation. I don't have an update as to the extent to which he was working alone or with others, or whether or not he has any contorted manifesto or something along those lines. I reject your question or the insinuation that anti-Semitism is rising because of Israel's defense of its country. Hamas declared war. Israel is responding to that war. We will not allow Hamastan to exist on our borders. We will not allow an Iranian proxy to exist on our borders. We had our people slaughtered. It's not going to happen again. Hamas has to be destroyed, will be destroyed the very same way that the Nazis were destroyed. These are new Nazis, and we're going to defeat them. Anti-Semitism is on the rise, not because of Israel's responding, but because of countries like France, who under this circumstance, now, tomorrow, plan to propose the unilateral recognition of a Palestinian state. So the French, in their contorted morality under the government of Macron, is going to declare October 7th Palestine Independence Day. This is a contorted sense of morality. They should be ashamed of themselves, and we're going to oppose that in the area of diplomacy as well.
אוקיי, אני מישראל, אנחנו עושים אם אפשר בעברית פרטים שאפשר לומר על החקירה. אנחנו מבינים שהוא הסתובב כאן זמן רב, והוא ידע ממש לזהות את הנציגים היהודים, זה היה אירוע רב-לאומי.
הוא היה בתוך האירוע, מתברר, הסתובב בתוך האירוע. אנחנו לא יודעים עדיין בדיוק מה הוא אמר, אבל אמר מספיק כדי שירחיקו אותו מהאירוע, יצא החוצה, חיכה לישראלים, עובדי השגרירות, לצאת, ירה בהם, למזלנו הרב, עוד שלוש עובדות השגרירות הספיקו לברוח והצילו את עצמם. לצערנו הרב, שרה וירון נורו מטווח אפס ונהרגו במקום.
Mr. Ambassador, could you confirm if the suspect was part of the rallies and the protests against Israel we have seen in the last 2 years here in the USA? And how are you going to reinforce the security in the embassy?
We have the full confidence in the law enforcement agencies here in Washington on the local level, on the federal level, and we're sure that they're going to provide full protection, not only for Israel's representatives here in the United States, but for Jewish communities around the country. People must not be afraid. People must wear their Star of David. They must wear their kippah on their heads. They must go forward and indicate to the world that this attempt to demonize and delegitimize and ultimately eradicate Israel and the rights of the Jewish people to the land of Israel won't be tolerated.
Was the suspect part of these rallies in the university?
We don't know at this point if he participated in rallies, but that's a peripheral question. The point of the matter is that on campuses around this country, where ideas, these are the temples of ideas, where smart ideas, intelligent ideas, moral ideas, truthful ideas are supposed to be taught, we have useful idiots running around in support of the destruction of Israel. Let's make one thing clear. If there's any genocide to be spoken about, it's the genocide in the screen in a shrill scream of from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. That means the elimination of Israel. That's genocide. What we're doing in Gaza is defending our people. We're doing everything we possibly can to avoid collateral damage. Much more than any army in the world has ever had to face. We have 450 miles of underground tunnels that were funded by international agencies, supposedly providing humanitarian funding. 450 miles of tunnels that are being operated by 40 to 50,000 terrorists, heavily armed, hiding behind the skirts of civilians. It's a very difficult task that we have, and we wish to God we wouldn't have to involve ourselves in this battle. But because it's been forced on us, we're going to battle and we're going to win the battle.
1 minute to end.
We're obviously feeling in a tremendous state of pain. These were beautiful young kids who worked with us every day. And the loss is a personal one for everyone. Listen, I got the knock on the door a year and a half ago when my son was killed in Gaza. And now I had to knock on the door and inform the parents of these young people that they've lost their children. It's a very difficult time for us. We're in mourning. But the thing about the Jewish people is we know how to get up from mourning with resilience and move on. We're going to move on. The embassy is going to move on. All of Israel's representatives here are going to move on and around the world. Despite the incessant, non-stop verbal attacks and now physical attacks on our people.
Mr. Ambassador, Mark Stone from Sky News. Could you tell us a bit more about what Yaron and Sarah did at the embassy? Just reflect on their work for us.
Yaron worked for one of our senior diplomats who works at the political division of the ministry. She's an expert on the Middle East, and he was her senior advisor. He did most of the research. He was just a prince of a human being, very unassuming, very intelligent, very accomplished. Sarah worked in our public diplomacy wing. She did a lot of work with our Christian liaison communities. She held events in the embassy for guests, and they were just a beautiful couple together.
And if I could just follow up, you were very critical just then of the government of France, of Emmanuel Macron. How would you suggest that foreign governments who are concerned, deeply concerned about the Israeli government's methods in Gaza, how should they be critical without, inciting violence, as you seem to be suggesting?
First of all, nobody is more concerned about conducting warfare than we are. We're the ones who are losing our soldiers. And if we could conduct a war without collateral damage, that would be wonderful. Do you know of any wars where there's no collateral damage? The French conducted wars without collateral damage. Our numbers, as a matter of fact, are much better. Okay? We do everything we can. By the way, my son would be alive today if we did what the government of France and most of the European countries are condemning us of doing. We don't strafe bomb population centers. We do everything we can to avoid collateral damage. So if you want to criticize, first sit down and talk and present an alternative. What you'd like us to do, perhaps, Mr. Macron, is to roll over and play dead. We don't do that. You want us to turn around and leave and let Hamas stay at our border? Would Emmanuel Macron allow for Hamas to be on the border of Paris? We're a tiny, small country. And we can't afford to have jihadis who want to eliminate us on our border. It's that simple.
Mr. Ambassador, Jonathan News. This couple were here last night for an event about peace. Is that not a sign that it's time to resume talks on the ceasefire?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
The couple were here last night for an event about humanitarian aid in Gaza. Is that not a sign that it's time to resume talks about a ceasefire?
We're constantly in talks about a ceasefire. We'll work it in tomorrow. If Hamas disarms, turns back over the hostages.
But it's like perfect.
Time from the international community.
Yeah, no.
Humanitarian leaders is campaigning starvation of the Palestinian population there. Some countries, including France, Israel.
All right, guys, yet again, we were just listening to the Israeli ambassador to the U.S. He's stating a number of things, one of which that the murders of the 2 embassy workers at the Israeli embassy, the staffers, if you will not be in vain. He also stated that he has full confidence in law enforcement, not only here in D.C., but throughout the country as well. Joining us now to discuss this and so much more is Rabbi Micah Greenland. He is an international director of the NCSY and kind enough to join us right here on the Live Zone. Rabbi, good to see you, sir. Welcome to the show.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
We just watched the Israeli ambassador address the media, and I have to tell you, he was, I don't want to use the word mad, but very vocal, if you will, with regard to the pain and suffering that he, along with his fellow staff members, are now feeling as a result of this horrific act. Before we get into what he had to say, I'm curious, any comments with regard to what took place yesterday?
I mean, certainly I agree that it's a despicable and heinous act of hate that can't be allowed to take place in a country that, like ours, that respects individual liberty and freedom of worship for every individual. But really, it's not as shocking as it should be that, given the amount of hateful speech that's been brewing over the last 19 months since Hamas attacked Israel and was immediately supported by activist voices here in the United States. This is the escalation that can lead to, and really painfully a tragic personal wake-up call that I think needs to shake us to our core.
Rabbi, one of the things that the Israeli ambassador said that really struck me is he stated that back on October 7th, he got a knock on his door. And when that door opened, he was told that his son was no longer with us. He then stated that he now had to knock on the door of the parents of the 2 Israeli ambassador staffers that lost their lives last night. I cannot imagine what he is going through, nor what the family members are going through as well, and the community.
It's horrific, and it's horrific for the ambassador personally, what the tragedy that his family has experienced, and so many families of Israelis and now of American Jews that are suffering as a result of what's the oldest hatred in the history of the world, the hatred of Jewish people. These individuals were targeted because of the event they were attending at a Jewish museum, and that really cannot be allowed to happen here in our country. It's personal for the ambassador, and it's personal for the community, because in this case, Sarah Milgram, who's the woman embassy worker who comes from Overland Park, Kansas, was a high school participant in our programs, and the Jewish Student Union high school program that we facilitate at Shawnee Mission East High School in Overland Park. She was a student leader back in her high school years when there was an incident of hate that took place. A swastika was spray painted on a shed outside of her high school, and she and another student leader led a program, United Against Hate, unifying the student body to say, we're not going to stand for this. And that's who Sarah was in her high school years, and it obviously led to her diplomatic work thereafter, really working towards peace. This was a peace worker and was gunned down because hate at this point in our country is overshadowing love, and that can't be allowed to stand.
Wow, so tragic. Rabbi, yet again, we are awaiting 2 press conferences to get underway. One with D.C. Mayor and the Washington Police Department, a briefing yet again on the shooting that took place last night. And we are also awaiting a White House press briefing, which should get underway momentarily. When the White House Press Secretary, Caroline Leavitt, approaches that podium, what do you want to hear from her with regard to what President Trump has to say to addressing anti-Semitism?
It's a great question. It really has to be that pronouncements cannot be empty. They need to be backed up with action. This White House has really begun doing that, cracking down on hateful conduct that is bullying, threatening, and intimidating, calls to action that are not limited to speech, but really have inspired a wave of violence that this is the worst example of, but just an example of. So I'd like to be hearing that they're going to continue to wrap up efforts to crack down on criminal conduct that extends from speech of we disagree with this policy or we have an issue. And this is America, and everybody's free to have debate along those lines. But threats that call for action. Globalize the Intifada is the term that most readily comes to mind, that has been screamed on college campuses for the last 19 months. Globalize the Intifada is a call for exactly what happened last night in Washington, D.C. That is globalizing the Intifada. Intifada is not a peaceful word. Intifada is the suicide bombings that Israel experienced in the early 2000s, where there were routinely buses blown up and nightclubs blown up and a Passover Seder blown up by terrorists. That's the Intifada. And shouts of globalize the Intifada are calls for that to happen here on American soil. And that's what we witnessed last night. And that's speech that is not limited to what should be protected under the First Amendment, but actually speech that's calling to violate criminal codes, to threaten the well-being and safety of Americans, and that can't be allowed to stand. That's what I'd like to hear.
Well said, sir. We also know that the Israeli ambassador pointed the finger specifically at France, stating that, well, France soon and very soon may very well acknowledge Palestine, if I heard correctly, as a state. The Israeli ambassador stating that with regard to what has happened, they have not been supportive of combating Hamas, and, well, Israel is doing all it can in order to do just that, keeping in mind the civilians that have lost their lives, stating they are trying so hard to make sure that's not the case. Would you like to comment on that?
I'd be happy to. War is tragic, and that is painful, a reality that every single armed conflict in the history of the world has harmed civilians in addition to combatants. And that's not the intention of war, but it is the natural byproduct of war. So that is tragic. At the same time, this is not a war that Israel sought. Israel is fighting a defensive war against an enemy that is hell-bent on its destruction. And that reality seems to escape certain world leaders. They skew cause and effect, invert cause and effect, and are placing blame at the feet of Israel for fighting a defensive war it did not ask for, does not want, and continues not to want. This war could end tomorrow if the hostages were returned. Hamas would demilitarize and lay down its weapons. Unfortunately, we continue to fight because Hamas insists on continuing to threaten the survival of the one Jewish state on the planet, and that's really what can't be rewarded by world leaders like the president of France, saying that we're going to recognize the Palestinian state as a reward for terrorist attacks on a sovereign state. That should not be rewarded with further concessions. That should be met strength against strength.
It was an act of senseless violence, or even worse, an act of hate. This afternoon, reaction continues to pour in following the brutal slayings of 2 Israeli embassy employees. Sarah Milgrim and Yaron Leschinski were gunned down last night during what appears to be another act of anti-Semitism. Joining us now to discuss this and so much more is Mr. Ron Halber, CEO of the Jewish Community Relations Council of Greater Washington, joining us right here on the Live Zone. Mr. Halber, always good to see you, sir. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I wish it happened to be better with regard to the circumstances surrounding this. However, in this case, we are yet again dealing with what appears to be anti-Semitism. First of all, your thoughts and or comments surrounding this horrific incident.
Well, last night our organization had our own annual meeting, and we went home, and then all of a sudden my phone went ablaze with every other Jewish leaders about the horrific slaying of this beautiful young Israeli Jewish couple set to get married, set to become engaged and to spend their lives together, and just killed on the streets of DC for no other reason for the fact that they are Israeli and Jewish. A senseless murder carried out by obviously a deranged individual who thought somehow killing 2 innocent people, you see them on the screen, beautiful couple, was going to bring about change 6,000 miles away. And unfortunately, this is not the first incident of this kind, and nor will it be the last.
Sir, you have been a leading advocate, if you will, for additional security funding for Jewish community and nonprofit institutions in and around the nation's capital region. My question to you is, as a result of this, yet again, this horrific incident, do you think we'll finally see that?
Well, it would be unfair to say that government hasn't stepped up. Mayor Bowser provided $500,000 for the first time for security funding. Virginia State has a fund. Maryland, the governor of Maryland, doubled the security funding. Montgomery County has a fund. But the kind of funding that we need is only possible by the federal government. The government needs to start providing billions of dollars to not just the Jewish community, but other communities at risk of hate crimes in order to go ahead and provide for operating dollars to pay for off-duty police officers and or armed security that can protect their institutions and also extend the perimeter from their events. Now, the American Jewish Committee, which was the sponsor of this organization, sponsor of this program last night, is a very professional organization, excellent staff, and there was nothing they could have done to prevent this random act of violence. But as we look into the future, what we might want to consider is getting more money so we can have more security and expand it out beyond the immediate building at several blocks away, so to create a greater enlargement zone of security at Jewish community events. The one thing I do know is that the Jewish community is not going to stop living proud and openly proud Jewish lives. We're not going to be intimidated. We're resilient. And right now our hearts are broken with our Israeli brothers and sisters abroad.
You made mention of the beautiful couple. Of course, we're referring to Yaron and Sarah. Our sources have told us that he was planning to propose to her sometime in the near future. Yet again, pulling at the heartstrings to think that will never happen now.
So instead of attending a wedding, families will be attending a funeral.
Those who continue to spew hate and or turn the other way when something like this happens, and I'm making reference to anti-Semitism, what is it that you would like to say to those people?
Well, you got to understand, this goes beyond anti-Semitism, all right? So anti-Semitism, which has accelerated, anti-Semitism was accelerating as well as other forms of hatred against other minorities and the LGBT community, Asian Americans and African Americans, Latinos and immigrants, was already on the upswing. But when the war broke out in Israel, it accelerated even more. And when anti-Semitic rhetoric plainly against Jews is utilized, and it's not condemned heavily and it becomes normalized, it's going to lead to this type of radicalization. And here's another important point. People are throwing words around. People use the word Zionist like it's a pejorative term, which just means a person who's Jewish who believes in a national homeland. And you see a lot of these anti-Israel organizations using this word every day and accusing Israel of things like genocide, which is absolutely disgusting because the word genocide was created to explain what happened in the Holocaust, because nothing had ever happened to them. They had to create the word genocide. To say that Israel's conducting a genocide is outrageous. I even hear ethnic cleansing, and that's outrageous too. I mean, yes, there is a humanitarian disaster in Gaza. Israel was attacked. There's a war. It's horrible. And how many Palestinians have been killed? A lot of them have been killed because Hamas has lies and picks up a gun and starts committing an act of terrorism. Now, I don't know if that's what happened yesterday, but I'm putting bets on that is what happened.
Well said, sir. Yet again, we have been speaking with Mr. Ron Halber. He's the CEO of the Jewish Community Relations Council of Greater Washington, joining us right here on the Live Zone. Truly appreciate you joining us, sir. All right, guys, we'll take it now to the White House, where White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has now approached the podium. Let's take a listen in.
Israeli embassy staff here in Washington, D.C. last night. Yaron Lashinsky and Sarah Milgram were a beautiful young couple. In fact, we learned that Yaron was planning to propose to Sarah next week in Jerusalem. Yaron's father, Daniel, spoke about the young couple's devotion for one another this morning. He said, "They were in love, one for the other. The embassy told us they were like a star couple at the embassy. I never expected something like this. He had his whole life before him." These words, especially every parent knows, are heart-wrenching. The evil of anti-Semitism must be eradicated from our society. I spoke to the Attorney General this morning. The Department of Justice will be prosecuting the perpetrator responsible for this to the fullest extent of the law. Hatred has no place in the United States of America under President Donald Trump. Everyone here at the White House is praying for the victims' friends and families during this unimaginable time. Now for some scheduling announcements. On Saturday morning, President Trump will deliver the commencement address at the United States Military Academy at West Point. On Monday, to commemorate Memorial Day, the President will visit Arlington National Cemetery and participate in a wreath-laying ceremony. The President will further honor our military next month on June 14th when he hosts the 250th anniversary of the United States Army with a grand military parade celebration right here in our nation's capital. President Trump will be joined by veterans, active duty troops, wounded warriors, Gold Star families, and patriotic Americans from across the country to celebrate our heroes who have kept us safe. Tickets for the parade and the celebration are available through the America 250 Commission's event registration portal. It will be a truly historic and special day for our country. After the parade, President Trump will travel to the G7 Leaders Summit in Canada from June 15th through the 17th. We will be sending an additional logistics information out after the briefing. Last night, Republicans in the House passed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, the most significant piece of legislation in years. There were a lot of good faith negotiations in the Republican conference leading up to the final passage, but as always, President Trump came in at the end to bring all sides together and get this deal done. This One Big Beautiful Bill will implement President Trump's Make America Great Again agenda by delivering the largest tax cut in American history for middle-class families, the working class, and small businesses. The One Big Beautiful Bill fulfills President Trump's promises of no tax on tips, which was applauded today by the CEO of Uber, no tax on overtime, a Made in America auto tax break, Trump savings accounts for newborn babies, and substantial tax cuts for our amazing seniors' Social Security benefits. The One Big Beautiful Bill will permanently secure the border by delivering the largest border security investment in history, funding at least 1 million annual removals of illegal aliens to carry out the largest deportation campaign ever, finishing the Trump border wall, and giving pay raises and bonuses for our incredible ICE and Border Patrol agents. The One Big Beautiful Bill protects the Medicaid program and its benefits for the most vulnerable Americans that the program was designed for, by kicking off 1.4 million illegal aliens from receiving benefits and implementing common-sense work requirements for able-bodied Americans. The One Big Beautiful Bill also helps get our fiscal house in order by carrying out the largest deficit reduction in nearly 30 years with $1.6 trillion in mandatory savings. Every single Democrat in the House of Representatives who voted against all of these common sense and massively popular policies. The Democrat Party has never been more radical and out of touch with the needs of the American people. The One Big Beautiful Bill is the final missing piece toward ushering the golden age of America. The Senate should pass this as quickly as possible and send it to President Trump's desk for a final signature. After today's briefing, President Trump will hold a Make America Healthy Again event alongside Secretary Kennedy and several other cabinet secretaries to unveil the Maha Commission report. President Trump wants every child in America to grow up and to live a long and healthy life. That's why he's working alongside Secretary Kennedy to end the chronic disease epidemic, to keep our children healthy, safe, and disease-free. The Maha Commission report is a historic assessment, the first of its kind by any presidential administration, of current evidence and research about the health crisis affecting America's children. This report is a review of pre-existing research to comprehensively assess what we understand about our health problems and what we don't understand, and how we can find those answers. All of the findings will be based on the gold standard of science. And I think I speak for all Maha moms across the country when I say we look forward to the president's event and remarks later this afternoon. And as we head into the Memorial Day weekend, a quick update on gas prices. According to the fuel savings platform Gas Buddy, the national average price of gasoline is expected to be $3.08 on Memorial Day. We expect that to continue to decline because of the president's energy policies. But this is down from Memorial Day last year. And adjusted for inflation, it's the second cheapest price for a gallon of gas on Memorial Day since 2003, thanks to President Trump. And finally, in other news, the Department of Homeland Security conducted a deportation flight from Texas to remove vicious illegal criminals in the United States. All of these individuals were sent, or are trying to be sent, to a third country. And President Trump promised to get vicious illegal alien murderers, rapists, and pedophiles like these out of our country, and he is trying to deliver on this promise. But no matter how upset this makes Democrats, we will continue to deport these monsters to keep Americans safe. And here are the heinous individuals who were on that flight. A Cuban national, convicted of homicide, armed robbery, false impersonation of an official, kidnapping, and robbery strong-arm. A Cuban national convicted of attempted first-degree murder with a weapon. A citizen of Laos convicted of first-degree murder and robbery. A Mexican national convicted of second-degree murder. A citizen of South Sudan convicted of robbery and the possession of a firearm. A citizen of Burma convicted of lascivious acts with a child less than 12 years old. A citizen of Burma convicted of first-degree sexual assault involving a victim mentally and physically incapable of resisting. It's disgusting. And a Vietnamese national convicted of first-degree murder. Now, a liberal activist district court judge in the city of Boston, Massachusetts, is trying to force the President of the United States to bring these monsters back to our country. Judge Brian Murphy is ordering the Department of Homeland Security to give these illegal criminals 15 days to reopen their immigration cases with access to phones and attorneys. Every single one of these individuals, I will add, had final orders of removal from our country. And now Judge Murphy is forcing federal officials to remain in Djibouti for over 2 weeks, threatening our U.S. diplomatic relationships with countries around the world, and putting these agents' lives in danger by having to be with these illegal murderers, criminals, and rapists. This is completely absurd. Judge Brian Murphy is not the Secretary of State. He is not the Secretary of Defense or the Commander-in-Chief. He is a district court judge in Massachusetts. He cannot control the foreign policy or the national security of the United States of America, and to suggest otherwise is being completely absurd. According to new reporting about this judge, he's a registered Democrat in Massachusetts who, during his Senate confirmation hearings, failed to disclose his ties to a radical left-wing organization that claimed the word illegal to describe illegal aliens was inherently prejudicial. This massive judicial overreach by Judge Murphy is part of the same opposition our administration has faced since day one. Radical left-wing judges are egregiously trying to stop President Trump from using his core constitutional powers as head of the executive branch and commander-in-chief. These judicial activists want to unilaterally stop President Trump from deporting foreign terrorists and keeping the American people safe. Nearly 80 million Americans re-elected this president to deport illegal criminals from our homeland, and polling consistently shows that 90% of Americans want illegal alien criminals, especially those with final orders of removal from our country, who have chosen to continue to stay here illegally. Americans want these people sent home. We hope the Supreme Court will continue to rein this in as soon as possible to restore proper constitutional order in our country. We'll take some questions. And here in our new media seat today, we have Jillian Michaels. She's a renowned personal health expert. I know all of you know her. I certainly do, watching fitness videos growing up. And a media powerhouse who continues to expand her reach with her podcast, Keeping It Real. Jillian, I know you're here today for the Make America Healthy Again event. We're proud to welcome you to the White House. Thanks for being in the briefing. Why don't you go ahead?
Thank you for having me. As a Maha mom yourself, how do you interpret the significance of this report in terms of delivering measurable health improvements for Americans and their kids, and what specific actions does the administration plan to take in response to it?
Sure. Well, thank you for the question. And again, thank you very much for being here. I would like to emphasize, we held a call earlier today with Secretary Kennedy, Secretary Rollins, Administrator Zeldin, and other officials at Health and Human Services to talk about the gravity of this report. When the president took office, he promised to make this country healthy again. And the president signed an executive order directing this commission. And now, less than 100 days later, the commission is delivering this report. It's another promise made and another promise kept. And the report identifies 4 major factors that are contributing to the rise in childhood chronic disease. Again, this is the first time the federal government has really recognized in a single report that we have a problem in our country. Our children are getting sicker, not healthier. This is not just a crisis, a health crisis, but it poses national security implications as well. And this administration is focused on ensuring we understand why. The 4 factors contributing to the report, as you will all hear from the president later, are number 1, poor diet, a robust discussion about ultra-processed food that are dominating our children's diets, environmental chemical exposure, plastics and other chemicals that are unfortunately a part of our daily American life. It talks about the lack of physical activity and chronic stress, and how technology-driven lifestyles are contributing to the decline of our children's physical and mental health. And then lastly, the report touches on the over-medicalization that's taking place in our American society, nowhere else in the world, but just right here in the United States of America. And the report directs the entire administration to understand why these issues are happening and what public policy can the administration implement to ensure that we are fostering a more healthy country for our children. So I'll leave it at that and let the president and his team speak more about this historic report later. But this should be good news for everyone. I don't care what your politics are. We should all agree that we want our children to be healthy and safe, and we want our food supply to be healthy and safe. We have the best farmers and ranchers in the world right here in the United States of America, and we have the best workers in the world. We have the best people in the world, but unfortunately we have a health crisis that's been plaguing us for too long, and this report speaks to the heart of it. You're welcome. Thanks for being here. Garrett, go ahead.
Caroline, you guys are very proud of your record on transparency. I have 2 transparency-related questions for you.
Sure.
On the president's dinner tonight, will the White House commit to making a list of the attendees public so people can see who's paying for that kind of access to the president?
Well, as you know, Garrett, this question has been raised with the president. I have also addressed the dinner tonight. The president is attending it in his personal time. It is not a White House dinner. It's not taking place here at the White House, but certainly I can raise that question and try to get you an answer for it.
Okay, and on the Qatari aircraft, the Air Force has said they're going to classify all the information about the work that has to get done to bring it up to snuff to be Air Force One. Previous Air Force One contracts, including the one that the president entered into in 2018, are public. That's available knowledge. Will the White House commit to releasing who's doing that work and the cost of that work? I understand that some elements might be classified about specific systems, but will you commit to releasing that basic information so people can see ultimately what this costs?
Well, Garrett, as you know, that's a question for the Department of Defense and the United States Air Force, who is accepting this jet as part of their fleet.
Declassify anything he wants.
Well, you'll have to ask the Department of Defense and the United States Air Force, who is accepting this jet as part of its fleet. Peter.
The president can declassify anything that he wants. Has he looked to see if there are any records here that would contradict what we've been told about Joe Biden's decline?
He has not directed anyone, to my knowledge, to look into that, but surely I can ask him if he intends to. I think the president has spoken on this pretty extensively, and I have spoken about it extensively from this podium as well, how it was truly one of the worst political scandals this country has ever seen, that the previous administration covered up the decline in the former president's mental and physical ability. And it's now all coming out, but the American people knew the truth, and that's one of the many reasons why President Trump won the election on November 5th.
And President Trump says that he basically thinks unelected Biden staffers concealed his decline so that they could use the levers of power for their own personal gain.
Well, look, that's not just the president thinking that, Peter. There's a new book out. I don't know if any of you have heard about it. Again, a little bit too late, because the American people knew the truth on this from the very beginning. And there were reporters in this room, including some from your network, Peter, I'll give you a little bit of credit here, who have said that clearly Joe Biden's staffers were engaging in this cover-up. So this is common sense. This isn't the president making it up. These are facts that are now finally being revealed.
Right, and I'm not saying the president's making it up, but he specifically talks about the auto pen. He thinks that staffers were using this auto pen.
Mm-hmm.
Is there some kind of like a badge that you have to swipe to use an auto pen? Is there a record of that?
I can tell you here at this White House, the president signs any document that has legal implications. The president signs every executive order. He signs every proclamation. He signs pretty much every document that is needed for the president's signature, with the exception of maybe some letters to children. From what we have heard and seen, that was not the case in the previous administration, and the president is raising good questions that are worth looking into. And as for Maha, I'm going to take a sip of water, if that's okay with you guys. Go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. Back to the presidential gala tonight. Did anyone in the White House or in the White House counsel's office advise the president against holding this sweepstakes, whereby the people who spent the most money on his Trump coin would then have access to the president at this dinner?
Again, the president has been asked about this. He has addressed this. I have also stated previously from this podium that the president is abiding by all conflict of interest laws that are applicable to the president. And I think everybody, the American public, believe it's absurd for anyone to insinuate that this president is profiting off of the presidency. This president was incredibly successful before giving it all up to serve our country publicly. And not only has he lost wealth, but he also almost lost his life. He has sacrificed a lot to be here, and to suggest otherwise is frankly completely absurd.
Does the White House
Libby,
have
go
any
ahead.
concerns?
Round of nuclear talks between Iran and the U.S. is going to take place on Friday in Rome. What is the president anticipating ahead of that, and if a deal doesn't come from that meeting, is he going to walk away?
Well, I'm glad you brought up Iran, because I do have an update. The president spoke to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today. They had a productive discussion. They discussed many things, including, of course, the tragic shooting that took place here in Washington, D.C. last night. But they also did talk about a potential deal with Iran, which the president believes is moving along in the right direction. And as the president told me, and he's told all of you, this deal with Iran could end in two ways. It could end in a very positive diplomatic solution, or it could end in a very negative situation for Iran. So that's why these talks are taking place later this week. Yamish, good to see you.
Hi, good. Thanks for taking the question.
Sure.
The president showed a video that he said showed more than 1,000 burial sites of white South Africans that he said were murdered. We know that that was not true and that the video wasn't showing that. So I wonder, why did the president choose
What's
to show
not
that?
true, Yamish?
It's not true that the video was showing a burial site. It is unsubstantiated that that's the case.
No, it is true that that video showed the crosses that represent.
Which is what the president claimed.
The video showed images of crosses in South Africa about white farmers who have been killed and politically persecuted because of the color of their skin. And those crosses are representing their lives. Those crosses are representing their lives in the fact that they are now dead, and their government did nothing about it. Are you disputing that there's no...
The fact that the video showed what the president claimed it showed, because it did not show that. But even more, what I'm asking you is who at the White House...
No, it did show that. It showed white crosses representing people who have perished because of racial persecution.
Verifies the videos that the president shows, and what protocols are in place when there's unsubstantiated information being put out for the world and world leaders to show?
Yamish, what's unsubstantiated about the video? The video shows crosses that represent the dead bodies of people who were racially persecuted by their government. In fact, the Associated Press of all places, has a picture of that very monument, and the caption from the Associated Press is, "Each cross marks a white farmer who has been killed in a farm murder." So it is substantiated, not just by that video and the physical evidence that everybody saw on display in the Oval Office, but also by another outlet in this room, the Associated Press. So you should take it up with them if you believe the claim is unsubstantiated, and that's a ridiculous line of questioning. John, go ahead. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Carolyn. The big, beautiful bill now goes to the Senate.
Does, yes.
A lot of the Republican senators have promised amendments that will water this thing down dramatically. What is the president's level of tolerance for their amendments to water it down, and what will be the action taken for some of the amendments that the president does not want?
Sure. Well, the One Big Beautiful Bill is named the One Big Beautiful Bill for a reason, because it is a one big beautiful bill that encompasses just about everything this president could want for the American public. It delivers on so many of his core campaign promises. So surely we want to see those campaign promises signed into law. And as the president put in his Truth Social post this morning, and as he said to me, we can celebrate this past the House for a couple of hours, but now it's time for the Senate to get to work. The president has a great relationship with Senate Majority Leader Thune, and of course so many friends on the Senate side of the Hill, and he's expecting them to get busy on this bill and send it to his desk as soon as possible. Phil.
Thank you. Given that the president said the other day the SALT cap, we don't want to benefit Democratic governors. If the Senate was to reduce that SALT cap or make any type of changes, would he support that, or is this a situation where done is beautiful and he just wants to pass it?
Well, look, it's a hypothetical question, obviously. Negotiations. Well, correct, and the bill passed, didn't it? So now it's off to the Senate where additional negotiations will take place, and we'll see how it goes. Michael.
Caroline, two questions on the beautiful bill. One of the campaign promises from President Trump was no tax on Social Security. Now, due to congressional rules, that wasn't able to be included in this bill. How does the president plan to follow through on that campaign promise?
Well, this bill did address taxes for our seniors. It actually allows them to take off significant money from their Social Security payments, get more money back, I should say, put more money in their pockets for various reasons. So this bill delivers on that promise. That's the view of the White House.
Secondly, you had two Republicans last night that voted against this bill, Congressman Massey and Davidson. Does the president think that they should be primaried?
I believe he does, and I don't think he likes to see grandstanders in Congress. What's the alternative? I would ask those members of Congress. Did they want to see a tax hike? Did they want to see our country go bankrupt? That's the alternative by them trying to vote no. And the president believes the Republican Party needs to be unified, and the vast majority of Republicans clearly are and are listening to the president. They are trusting in President Trump, as they should, because there's a reason he's sitting in this Oval Office. It's because he's the unequivocal leader of the Republican Party. Not just a president for Republicans, but all Americans. The president's approval rating is at an all-time high right now, and it's because he knows how to deliver. And Republicans like Thomas Massey and others should take note. Stephen.
Thank you, Caroline. Building on the question about Social Security, the bill includes the president's promises to address taxes on tips and overtime. Could you say his feelings about the income cap? Is he satisfied where that landed? And also on a different matter, could you comment on the investigation that the Justice Department has into Andrew Cuomo?
As for the first question, the president is clearly satisfied where the bill landed because it passed. Again, now it has to go to the Senate, so changes could certainly be made. As for your second question, I would defer you to the Department of Justice. Christian.
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. Can you explain the decision to totally shake up FEMA leadership just a week before hurricane season?
You'd have to ask the Department of Homeland Security in terms of leadership, but certainly the administration, and I know the National Security Council here at the White House is monitoring storms and natural disasters that are happening across the country at all times. We're briefed on those. The administration is briefed on those, and Secretary Noem is leading that effort for sure. Go ahead.
Switching gears, Caroline.
Yeah, just following up on Warren Davidson, I wanted to read you his quote that he posted online. While I love many things in the bill, promising someone else will cut spending in the future does not cut spending. Deficits do matter, and this bill grows them. Why should that get a Republican primary?
This bill saves $1.6 trillion for the American taxpayer. It saves more than any bill that has ever passed Capitol Hill has. In fact, by double. The next bill saved $800 billion. This bill saves $1.6 trillion. So this is a very good bill for the American people, the American taxpayer. And I believe, as an outlet put it with a headline this morning, it might have been Politico actually, they wrote that the American people are going to be flush with cash when this thing is signed into law. And that's a good thing for American taxpayers. Sure, go ahead.
Caroline, what is the president doing to win Senate passage by July 4th? And does that include work to eliminate carried interest and make business tax cuts permanent? Where is he on those issues?
Well, look, this bill literally just passed the House of Representatives, so now our team is suiting up for discussions with the Senate side of Capitol Hill. The president again said this morning he hopes to see this bill at his desk as soon as possible, and he'll be engaged in the process to get it through the Senate, just like he was to get it through the House of Representatives.
What kind of assurances did he give the Freedom Caucus members to kind of ensure that this would get through last night? Was changes to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac part of that equation, changes administratively to Medicaid as well?
Well, I was in that meeting yesterday with the president and House Freedom Caucus, and he told them how he wants to be a cheerleader for them, a cheerleader for the Republican Party, and for the country. And Republicans faced a pivotal moment yesterday. They could have voted to bankrupt the country and increase taxes by $4 trillion, or they could vote for this one big, beautiful bill which cuts taxes and saves American taxpayers money. And he put that proposition before them, and clearly they heeded the call because the bill passed last night. Sure.
Caroline, so on the
or this morning, rather. Every day is going into the next. Go ahead.
The Netanyahu call. Just curious, did the president raise the flow of aid into Gaza? Is he happy with where that situation is right now?
Not to my knowledge, but I can certainly go back and check.
And did you have any reaction to the Supreme Court's ruling about the religious charter school today, as well as Justice Coney Barrett's decision to recuse herself?
We'll get you an answer on that case specifically. Sure.
You mentioned the president has a good relationship with Leader Thune. Has he talked to him specifically about the plan to get this through the Senate? Does he plan, or is he going to reach out to Republicans who have voiced concerns?
Not to my knowledge. Has he spoken to Leader Thune this morning? He very well could have. I just wasn't briefed on that call. We can go back and check for you. The president did speak to Prime Minister Netanyahu this morning. He also had a call with President Sheinbaum this morning. He was receiving his intelligence briefing. He's been very busy all morning. But again, he certainly intends to remain active and engaged in these negotiations with the United States Senate to get this bill done.
And just following up on the dinner tonight, you mentioned this is not a White House dinner, but the president is always the president, and the Trump family is making money off of this. So can you just explain, how is this not the president using the office to enrich himself?
All of the president's assets are in a blind trust, which is managed by his children, and I would argue one of the many reasons that the American people reelected this president back to this office is because he was a very successful businessman before giving it up to publicly serve our country. Reagan.
Thanks, Caroline. Last week, the president told Brett Baer that he trusts his people, but thinks that the official narrative on his assassination attempts are, quote, a little bit odd. FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino said days later that there's no conspiracy to find, and as he put it, quote, the there that you're looking for is not there. My question is the president personally satisfied with the investigations into the attempts on his life? And does he agree with Deputy FBI Director, or does he think there's more to it?
Well, in the lead up to your question, you answered your own question with the president's own words, and I'll leave it at that. Sure, go ahead, Haley.
Thank you, Caroline.
Haley, go ahead.
Oh, thanks. I wanted to follow up on his call with Prime Minister Netanyahu in his effort to reach a deal with Iran. Does he feel like he has the Prime Minister's support in this effort at this point, or did the Prime Minister raise concerns to him in this conversation?
I won't get further into the private discussion between the president and the prime minister, but surely they have a good relationship, one that's built on transparency and trust. And the president has made it very clear to not just Prime Minister Netanyahu, but also the world, that he wants to see a deal with Iran struck, if one can be struck. He does not want to have to take the latter option, the more severe and negative option. He wants to see a deal. The president is a deal maker, and he believes strongly in diplomacy, and he's made that clear to the prime minister, but also to all of you and, frankly, the rest of the world. Mary.
Thank you, Caroline. Two questions, one on the terror attack last night and then another on the big, beautiful bill. Do you or President Trump have a message to politicians like Ilhan Omar, who only this morning explicitly avoided condemning this act of terror?
It's despicable. And frankly, we have seen a rise in anti-Semitic protests of pro-Hamas protests of terrorist sympathizers. We saw them on our college campuses, and we've seen the Democrat Party turn a blind eye and in some cases actually embrace such anti-Semitic illegal behavior. And that's why this administration has done more than any administration in history to crack down on anti-Semitism. As you know, in January, when the president took office, he signed a new executive order to combat anti-Semitism. He created a commission focused on doing just that. The Justice Department announced their task force as well. The Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has revoked thousands of student visas from campuses where these pro-Hamas terrorist campus agitators and violent protests took place. And we've also withheld funding from those very campuses as well in an effort to combat anti-Semitism. So the president's made it very clear that such hatred will have no place in our country.
Thank you. And then on the big beautiful bill, I know there's a provision that the House included that defunds Planned Parenthood, not only because of the fact that it's the nation's largest abortion provider, but also because it's, I think, the biggest distributor of transgender hormones right now, even to minors, according to Live Action. So is the president committed to making sure that provision stays in the Senate?
The president has maintained a very clear commitment to ensuring that this administration and the American people's tax dollars are not funding any institution. That includes hospital systems that are funding the chemical castration and mutilation of children. We're not going to tolerate taxpayer dollars going to such efforts. Sure.
Thanks, Caroline. You mentioned at the top of the briefing that the migrants were to be sent to a third country. I was just wondering, could you share any more on, which countries the administration has struck these agreements with and what that agreement with South Sudan specifically looks like?
Well, first of all, I won't litigate foreign policy from the podium, but what I will reiterate is the absurdity of this ruling from a district court judge in Boston who is just creating new immigration laws out of thin air. This administration, let me be very clear, because there have been a lot of fake headlines about this deportation flight over the last 2 days. This administration has complied with all court orders. And the individuals whose names I just revealed and whose criminal histories I just spoke of that are on this flight, every single one of them had a final order of removal from our country. In fact, one of these violent illegal criminals had a final order of removal given to him in 1999. It's 2 years after I was born. This individual, this criminal, has been living in our country for an entire generation. And now we have a district court judge who is trying to tell the president and the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Homeland Security that an illegal criminal murderer who's been hiding in the shadows in our country for nearly 30 years cannot be deported from United States soil. That not only is undermining our entire immigration system, but it is also undermining our diplomatic negotiations with countries around the world. How are countries on this earth supposed to trust the United States government and these good faith diplomatic negotiations when these countries accept these repatriation flights? How are they supposed to trust us if we have radical district court judges who are going to say, no, you can't do that? And now these illegal criminal murderers and rapists have to sit in Djibouti with our ICE agents who now have to sit there for more than 2 weeks without the proper resources. This judge is not only undermining our immigration system, undermining our foreign policy and our national security, but this judge is undermining the safety of the ICE agents who are putting their lives on the line to remove this list of illegal criminal terrorists. It's truly despicable what's happening in our court system, and the president and this administration hope that the Supreme Court will do what it needs to do to rein in these liberal activist judges. And the Supreme Court has already said it is well within the president's purview to dictate foreign policy, and a radical district court judge should not be getting in the way of that. We'll see you all later at the Maha event. Thank you.
All right, guys, there you have it. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt addressing a number of things. First of all, giving condolences to the families of the 2 Israeli embassy staffers that were brutally gunned down yesterday. She also made mention of, well, the House passing the big, beautiful bill that President Trump wanted passed. It now heads to the Senate, and she spoke about, yet again, securing the border. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Guys, back here on the Fox 5 Live Zone, how about a little weather, shall we? In that case, we bring in our guy, Tucker Barnes, joining us right here on the LZ.
Why not a lot of weather?
Yeah, a lot of wet weather, sir.
Yes, I mean, here's the good news. We're going to do it today, and then, well, of course, we did it yesterday. We should be looking at improving forecasts for the weekend.
Thank you.
Gradually getting better around here. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday all look good. So
I'll put money in your tip jar.
let's do the rain. Yeah, over 5 inches of rain, by the way, now for the month of May. It's been a wet month, and it continues out there this afternoon. We are looking at more clouds and more showers. It's not gonna, guys, it's not gonna be a rain out at any point here. But just like yesterday when the showers and the drizzle kind of came and went, we'll do more of that this afternoon. Airport numbers are still very much on the cool side, not even 60 degrees during your midday hours. And I think by late afternoon, with some brightening in the sky conditions, we may see mid to upper 60s, but that's still about 10 degrees below average. So it's still going to be a cool afternoon. It's still going to be, at times, a wet afternoon, especially if you're north of town here. So let's call it north of 66, north of Route 50. Best chances for rain. You can see the satellite and radar doing its thing. A lot of clouds out there. There are a few breaks in the clouds, especially off to the south and west. So it's possible you could see a little sunshine here or there. It's also possible at any point this afternoon the environment gets unstable enough that there are a few showers that break out or a rumble of thunder. So just be ready for that. One more day of it. If you want to be, and I know you're into your weather, Guy.
Oh yes, sir.
That is a sprawling, beautiful. Upper level low.
Never seen you so excited before.
Yeah,
Tucker.
I mean, this one right here is a beauty. Off to the north and east there, that is a developing nor'easter. See it up near Boston, all that heavy rain.
Yeah.
And there'll be some very gusty winds and perhaps some beach erosion up along the New England coastline over the next 24 hours. The good news is this guy's lifting out of the region. And as it does so, improving conditions for everybody from the mid-Atlantic to New England. So if you're traveling over the next 24 hours, conditions will be improving up there as well. I know a lot of people heading to the beaches this weekend as well. There you go, 2 surface lows. I mentioned the upper level low, that's the beauty. Coastal nor'easter developing and windy conditions along the beaches to start our weekend. Tomorrow will be a windy day for all of us, including at our beaches. And tomorrow will be an improving day. We'll get some sunshine around here Friday. That's this afternoon. Weekend forecast, and let's do the weekend, looks great. Mix of sun and clouds, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday with a gradual warming trend into the low 70s. It will be a little cool for this time of year. However, it won't rain, and if you're down at the beaches, it looks rain-free as well. So all in all, not a bad Memorial Day weekend. We've certainly done worse.
All right. Will you be upset with me if I tell you I didn't listen about the rain part and all I care about is the weekend?
No, you can, this is your show, man. You get to make the calls.
Good stuff. Thank you, Tucker.
Yeah.
Tucker Barnes
Have a great
joining us
day.
right here on the Live Zone. Guys, if you haven't already done so yet, make sure you download the Fox Local app. That way you can take that rainy/not rainy forecast with you any and everywhere you go. All right, guys, back here on the Fox 5 Live Zone. Joined now with Sylvia, our digital content producer, with several of the stories she and I, or really you, are following for you.
That's right.
Good to see you, Sylvia.
Good to
Happy
see you
Baby
too.
Friday.
Baby Friday. It's like the week just kind of flew by, right?
I know. Gosh, it was a busy week. A lot of press
Yes.
conferences. So
Yes.
obviously we've been providing you with a lot of information as
Right,
well.
right.
All right, let's talk about some of the stories we have posted for you on our
Yeah.
website, fox5dc.com. In this case, we're going to kick it off with a hometown hero.
Yes, Shabuzi, we know the Northern Virginia star, who has set a lot of new records moving forward with his song, a bar song, Tipsy, that's going on. But he recently graced the cover of People magazine, and he is embracing what the magazine is coining a hot guy summer. So we know Megan Thee Stallion kind of kicked things off with a hot girl summer a couple of years ago, actually. But I guess now we're having a new surgence of a hot guy summer. Now, I'm not sure what that looks like exactly, but Shabuzi is basically embracing that, you know, showing up in his true authenticity, a bachelor. People are saying he's very attractive or easy on the eyes. So it would make him the perfect hot guy summer.
Why can't we call it Fly Guy Summer?
Oh, I like Fly Guy Summer.
Yeah.
You know, Guy, I hate to say it, but somehow the men always like to bite what the women are doing.
Oh, is that
so
what it
that's
is?
why
Okay.
it was Hot Girl Summer, so now all of a sudden it's Hot Guy Summer. It's like, be a little creative. I like the Fly Guy Summer better.
It's called creativity.
Yes,
Thank
there
you
we
very
go,
much.
men.
Well, if that happens, that'd be really cool.
Yes.
Yet again, I am Team Shabuzi, and he represents the hometown, Woodbridge, for me.
Yes,
So.
yes, I love it. He also spoke about some of the things that he's expecting and how, you know, he knows this song was amazing, but he's looking to do even more than that and reach new heights. So keep an eye out on what Shabuzi has going on. It sounds like we have some surprises, or he has some tricks up his sleeves.
Speaking of keeping an eye out, I am definitely keeping an eye out on my Commanders. Thank you.
Yes, and this news is something that I'm super excited for because I love this series and this show, surprisingly, even though I don't really tune into sports frequently, but I love documentaries and series and shows. So Hard Knocks recently announced that the Commanders will actually be one of the teams featured on their in-season series, where they basically go behind the scenes with a football team and show everybody what's going on, from coaching staff decisions from the locker room to players. So fans really are going to get a chance to see a behind-the-scenes look at some of their favorite players.
Yeah. This is the in-season one, correct?
Yes, in-season.
Okay, yeah.
Right.
This is a new thing they're doing. I think they started it either last year or the year before last.
Yes,
I have watched
I think it was
every
like
Hard
2
Knocks.
years before. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
this will be interesting.
I just hope it doesn't, let's say, put some jinx them, if you will.
Yeah,
because, you know, it's kind of like that whole Madden thing. If you play, you know, Madden, the video game, anyone who's on the cover of that typically doesn't
I've heard
do
of that.
well. And it's
I've
a whole
heard of
long
that.
story.
Oh, I hope this is not the case for the Commanders. It's actually their first time being on Hard Knocks.
All right.
So hopefully this works in their favor. It's set to premiere in December, not an exact date, but you know that Netflix game is also supposed to be happening in December with that Christmas game. So maybe the recordings of this will kind of coincide, and we'll get to see a little bit of behind the scenes around the holiday season with the Commanders.
And it's all of the NFC East, correct?
Yes, all the
Okay.
NFC East. I forgot. I wasn't really concerned with
Well,
that.
no, I mean, yeah, well,
Dallas Cowboys,
yeah,
Philly.
it doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah,
So
exactly.
90% Commanders.
Yes.
2%.
We're here for Commanders. I want to see what
Eagles.
Jaden Daniels got going on in the locker room. That's really what I'm here for, honestly.
1% Giants and 0.00005
Yeah,
for the Cowboys.
I guess they'll be there somewhere, but we don't care.
All right, we got about a minute left, and I know you want to talk all things Buc-ee's,
Yes.
shall we?
Okay, so Buc-ee's is something that is on everyone's mind, and I know we talked about this initially when we learned that the rest stop or the convenience store, I don't know exactly what to really call this mega center here, is heading to Virginia, and I believe it's coming in June. I want to say June 30th may be the exact date that it's opening, but I could be a little wrong. But we do have the full article up on our site, so you can take a look at that. But everyone is looking forward to this. It's on their radar. It's been one of our top stories since we put the story up a couple of months ago. So obviously, Buc-ee's is where it needs to be, and hopefully I'll make my way over there and see if it's actually worth its salt.
Why does Buc-ee look kind of scary to me? Is it just me? Maybe it's the size
actual,
of his teeth.
Yeah, I think that, what is it, a chipmunk, a woodchuck?
Yeah, we're going to get in trouble for not
Yeah,
knowing.
the fans are going to come for me. It's fine.
Viewers going to say, why don't you know
yeah,
what
yeah,
Buc-ee
the
happens
nerve
to
of
be?
you. You should know what this is. And the what is it, the Bucky Nuggets?
Yeah.
The Nuggets, something like that?
Who knows? I tell you what, if he
Yeah.
plays for the Commanders, we'll definitely know.
Get him a Hard Knocks. There we go.
That's really good. You know, I have not frequented that store,
Yeah.
but you know, I can't wait to do so as it makes its way yet again to my home state,
Right.
Virginia.
Yeah.
And they call it Virginia Forever. Sylvia,
Yes,
with all
perfect.
things with regard to what we're following for you on our website, that's fox5dc.com. Always good to see you, Sylvia.
Of course, thank you for having me.
All right, guys, if you haven't already done so, make sure you download the Fox Local app. That way you could take Sylvia, myself, Tucker, I can keep on going. Any and everybody right here at Fox 5 with you, any and everywhere you go. The Take next on Fox 5.